thing I've ever seen in my life.
Glad you left. Okay. So, I've been doing a lot of shadow work.
Okay.
And there's this one emotion that I went into, and I came out remembering these nightmares I had as a kid. And I never really thought much about it until that point, but it really reminded me of how much it affected me. And I had them all the time. And I was just wondering what that was. They kind of look like black, and I could mostly feel them more than see them, but I could also see them. And I was little, probably like 7, something like that. But that's what it took me to, and I just didn't know what that was. So I was wondering if you could...
So like what you're saying is that when you went into the inner child processing, you were taken back to the memory of nightmares?
Yes.
So what nightmares are mostly about is that your subconscious mind is trying to process things that it's gone through on an emotional level. So let's say that your parents have been punishing you by putting you in timeout. Or let's say, no, let's do a better one. Ready? Let's go here. Because can you do me a favor and actually think of your childhoods for me? I'm just going to walk the audience and use you, okay? All right. So the dominant pattern that people in this audience had in their childhoods was you were the ones that didn't fit in, right, with the family. So it's sort of like the odd one out that's never understood. So this is how this goes. Let's say that you feel like your parents aren't seeing you, aren't feeling you, aren't getting you, aren't understanding, and aren't even trying. You start to have nightmares as a child about that emotional state. But what the nightmare will look like is a closer symbolic representation to the feeling that you had during that experience. So it might be something like you're trying to get your parents' attention and they're just walking away. Or else something's trying to attack you. That's another feeling too. If you've got unsafety as a vibration in a family that also did not really think that you fit in with them, you may have the feeling or the dream about something pulling you back that's like unseen and unfelt. Because that's the thing, emotions when we're younger, right, we don't understand it. It just feels like it's this force that's got us, which is why so often you'll dream about it in a poltergeistic way. It'll be like a black entity or just like something that you can't really see, but it's after you. That means you're dealing with an emotional state. So let's say that you've got that fear, so that black entity is basically pulling at you and then you're trying to get your parents' attention and they're walking away. That's a very common nightmare to have as a child. So that's what's happening. Your subconscious mind back then was trying to process emotional states that were painful to you in waking life. And what could have happened, which is why I think you're going back there, I still think there's stuff below that. So like, you know how you can go into a person within a person?
Yes.
I'll explain that in a minute, but what's happening essentially is that I think that the dreams themselves became traumatizing.
Yes.
Panic attacks can be this way as well, where the actual feeling of the experience can be traumatizing in and of itself, so that's what you start to fear. Dreams can be the same thing, so if the dream is that traumatizing enough, then you might be going to that trauma when there's something deeper that's causing that dream.
Right.
So if any of you run into this particular circumstance, what she's talking about, by the way, is this process where you go into an emotion, and using that emotion, you ask, when was the first time I felt this feeling? What that teaches you is the causation of the emotion. So let's say that you got this feeling of like intense jealousy. You go into it. When was the first time I felt this feeling? Maybe you're way back at 5 years old and you're at a birthday party, and somebody who is a friend of yours got a present that you really wanted. As an adult, we might look at that and say, that's not really much of a trauma. But let's get real. As a child, serious trauma, major imprint of jealousy. Now, if somebody tells you it's not okay to feel jealous, why are you doing that? You got all your presents on your birthday, so that's a shame, right? That teaches you to suppress that particular emotion. This is the beginning of your emotional wounds. That becomes this suppressed imprint. And a part of you does not actually move forward with you into the future. In essence, it's stuck in time. So you will be called back there by your triggers. This is what triggers are, which everyone has, by the way. So I like to talk about the fact that post-traumatic stress is something which absolutely every single human on earth has. The point at which that becomes a disorder is when it really affects your life to the point where it's hard to function. But everyone has post-traumatic stress. That's why something bugs you and it doesn't bug the person sitting next to you. It's because it's already a wound. So these wounds that are inflicted on us in childhood, they stay with us, and they cause us to act all kinds of dramatic. And people will look at you and say, why the hell are you acting that way? That's so dramatic. When in reality, you're acting perfectly in accordance with the reality you perceive, which is based on something you experienced previously. So what she's saying is that when she's going into these emotions in order to find the causation of the experience, that childhood memory, she's going back to the nightmares that she's having. If that happens to any of you, what I want you to do is to fuse yourself with the first person perspective of the kid having the nightmares, and then ask the question again. This is like Inception style stuff. This is where you go into a memory within a memory. So let's say that I'm looking at the child, you're the child and you're the one having the nightmares. So I would basically turn my back to you, fuse with you so that we are now in first person perspective. Then I would ask again, when is the first time I felt this feeling? Then I might be in the crib and I can't move and I feel like it's scary but I can't cover my face, that type of thing. And then that's the memory we deal with.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Sounds crazy, but yes. Another question I had was my right eye is kind of like falling a bit, like drooping, and I was wondering what is the reason for that, or is there like another reason?
When did you notice it start?
Maybe like 2 years ago it started. I noticed it. I never really noticed it before. And also on this side I have a birthmark, and I don't know if it has all to do with something, because I feel like this side of my face always gets like more damaged.
Can you lean forward for a minute? Mm-hmm. There is a nerve that's in the back of your neck that is being affected, so you're right. It's actually a nerve issue. But if you want to look, we can look at the nerve issue itself, and you can, of course, do things or do essential oils for nerves specifically. But if you want to trace it back even farther, what we've got here is that your father created a really deep imprint of you seeing yourself in a negative light. And that's what's causing it.
Okay, makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.